Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today I'm going to answer a question from a viewer which relates to a subject which I'm sure we can all see some relevance in our own lives, and that is, are we spending too much money on our clothing? And is it an appropriate way for us to channel our funds as we go through life? So, today's question comes from a young gentleman called Mark, and I will read for you the email which he sent to me. He tells me his name is Mark, he is in the United States Air Force, and he says, "My reason for messaging you is to ask for advice. I am a man of 22 years of age. I have a small but respectable starter wardrobe, including 3 suits and some quality leather shoes. I often feel great anxiety and uncertainty about whether I want to continue down this path. Once a week, I'm sort of all for sartorial pursuits, and the next week, I'm talking myself out of engaging in it. My next suit, and each suit which I intend to buy in the future, I intend to commission from a made-to-measure outlet. And these will range from $2,000 to $3,000 US, which will take me up a step on the sartorial ladder. They certainly will. My number one goal in life is to have a wife and maybe 2 children. My fear is that my future wife and children may see my sartorial passion as self-centered or inconsiderate, as the money could be spent on more important things. For context, I don't spend my money on any other hobbies, and I save more than I spend. I also have respectable savings for a man of my age. My question is, how is this expenditure of funds on my sartorial journey justifiable to my family and even to myself, when it is obvious luxury, but it is also a passion which I truly love?" And he's put a PS here. One of my great style inspirations is King Charles III, God save him. His environmentalism and classic style speak for themselves. Well, Mark, thank you for your question. It's a good and valid question, and you've made several points which I will try and unpack as we have our brief conversation today. Now, the first thing I would say is we need to take in context what you're talking about, and really the modern view of dressing well, opposed to what I would consider is the style of an intentionally well-dressed man in the classical gentleman's style. Now, in this modern world, which tends to focus more upon fast fashion and fleeting trends, and is also very much, targeted towards casuality and comfort over being intentionally well dressed, it might seem to some people that investing good money in your clothing is something of an antiquated viewpoint. And the younger generation you get, the more they may feel that way, because they have not grown up seeing perhaps their fathers and grandfathers going off to work well dressed, wearing a suit, putting their best foot forward. They haven't necessarily seen that because the generations are getting more and more casual. But I absolutely think there remains a compelling argument as to why we should dress well and the benefits which stem from being an intentionally well-dressed man and consequently spending a little bit of money on it. Now, I'm going to give you 3 points today which I think still give that argument as to why it is a sensible thing to invest a proportion of your available funding into good clothing, because it already sounds as if you're a well put together young fellow. For a start, you're serving your country, you've taken the oath, you're wearing the uniform of your nation, and you're keeping other people safe. You're putting other people above yourself, so that's a really good thing. You also tell us that you're already on that journey to Chap Nirvana. You're investing, you've bought some clothes, you're moving up the ladder, now going to made to measure, putting a bit more money into it. You've given it some thought. And also, you're thinking to the future, about your family, about how they may be impacted by the way you spend. Also, you tell us that you also know the value of saving, and you've put money aside. So I'm quite happy that you're a well-adjusted young fellow. But these points I'm going to give you now are really just to underline your confidence in what you're doing in your sartorial journey. Now, the first point I'm going to tell you is that you're making sound investments is let's think about the value of appearance in the modern world. Because whether you like it or not, the way that you dress, the way that you look to others is going to be a big part of how they initially judge you. Now, when I say whether you like it or not, a lot of people in this woke world will say, well, we should judge everybody equally, irrespective of their physical appearance. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, friends, it is human instinct to draw an impression of people before you ever get to know of their inner character, of their moral compass, of their charisma. We initially only see them, their physical representation, with the Mark I human eyeball. And if we see a smart and highly presentable person, we draw certain inferences from it. It exudes confidence of the wearer of such clothes. It represents somebody who appears professional in their outlook to life, who have sort of targeted attention to detail in the way that they're dressing themselves. And all of these things, I don't care what anybody says, remain extremely valuable qualities which people will see in others. Now, in your own particular world, the way that you appear is very important, because when I say your own particular world, you tell us you're in the military. I was in the military myself, and I understand that the way we dress, our uniform in the military, is one of the tools of the trade, because not only does it show our compatriots that we are on the same side as them, but in the way that we present ourselves, as I say, it forms the judgment process from others. In the military, your promotion prospects rely upon your leaders, your managers, doing an annual report, and they will take lots of things into consideration when they give you that fitness for onward advancement. And your appearance is definitely one of the things which they take into account. And this goes for the corporate world and every other part of the world, however you look at it. I'm going to prove the point here, right? When I left the military a very long time ago, a final report was drawn up upon me by my commanding officer. And I'm going to read for you an excerpt from that final report. My squadron leader wrote here, meaning me, he has gone about his work in a professional manner, always producing high standards of work. He has mixed well with his contemporaries and has always been willing to volunteer for extra duties. An extremely smart and loyal man, Senior Aircraftman Jones has been a credit to the service wherever he has served. The point I want to bring to your attention there is the bit where my boss says, an extremely smart and loyal man. He placed extremely smart above loyalty in the way that he described me in this severance report when I left the military. And I think that is telling, be it subliminal or be it something he'd done without even thinking about it, but it just goes to show that this is what the impression that you give to others, the value that dressing well and presenting yourself, it's really important. It makes sure that you're noticed and people acknowledge the sort of person that you are. Now, in your email, you said that you are seeking to eventually have a family and be, settled and have a, traditional family life. Great attributes to aim for. I've been down that path. It's brought me the greatest joy in my life. So the way that you dress can influence that also. Ladies, all right, if it is ladies, of course, that is your predilection in life, could be members of the same sex, but we're talking about ladies here. Women love a man in a suit. There is no doubt about that at all. But is that just urban myth, or is there any truth to it? Well, I can shed some, maybe not scientific research in it, but there is a British bespoke tailoring house called King and Allen. They've been around since 2003. I don't know anything about them, but what I do know is that they did undertake some research, an experiment in effect, in the value of dressing well when it comes to the way that other sexes perceive you and they judge you. And this was an interesting experiment they undertook. They took 20 men from a broad cross-section of the community, different ages, different body shapes, different ethnic groups, and what they did, they took those 20 men and they took 6 photographs of each of those men. 3 photographs of the man wearing casual clothing and 3 photographs of the same man in the same lighting, with the same facial features, same background, 3 photographs in smart sartorial clothing, a suit in effect. So they had 3 images casual, 3 images formal. They took those 6 images and they showed them to 100 women, selected at random, again from a broad cross-section, from the ages of 18 to 38, different backgrounds, different racial groups, and they asked them to express an opinion of who they found the more attractive. Now, it's not going to be any sort of rocket science to you. It's not going to be a surprise, right? It's a landslide. 80% of the females who looked at those images of men identified that they were more attracted to those who wore formal clothing, suits. And interestingly, if you drill down a little further, the younger women in the survey group said they were particularly swayed by the men who dressed well. Possibly, I would hypothesize, because they haven't in their younger lives, again, been exposed to men wearing suits as a matter of course, in workplaces and things like that. So they see the suit as something a little special, a little outside the ordinary, a little more attractive. And it's interesting that the survey threw up that the same man was deemed to be 12% more attractive than wearing a suit than when he just wore casual clothing. Now, it may not sound much, 12% more attractive, but let me tell you, right, when I was a 22-year-old chap out in the clubs and nightclubs and pubs seeking to make the acquaintance of young ladies, if you said to me, I can give you a boost here which will increase your attractiveness to the opposite sex by 10%, let alone 12, I would have said, how do I pay for this? How do I get it? How do I sign up? Because for me, 10% seems like a superpower, and what would that have done for my confidence and all of these other aspects which are so important when you're a young person out making your way in the world. So absolutely, if you're seeking to make the acquaintance of members of the opposite sex, dressing well is definitely a route you may wish to take. Now, the other reason, or one of the other reasons why I think dressing well is a sensible investment, is that when you do tend to invest more money in clothing, you will find that these items are more durable. They will last longer because they will typically be made of better quality components. All right, they're not cheap fabric. They are going to be much higher quality. It's going to retain their shape longer. They're going to retain their colour longer. They are going to look better, and more importantly, as well as lasting longer, they're likely to be more easily repaired. So if there's damage, they can be repaired, or if they need to be adjusted. If your body shape changes in the future, well-tailored clothing will more easily be altered to accommodate the changing body that you have, as we all have. So rather than replacing worn out clothing or clothing which no longer fits on an increasingly regular basis, having that nice quality item, which is going to last longer, be alterable as you change in life, it's going to save you money in the long run. And finally, my third point, why I believe that investing in clothing is a sensible approach for you, is it is an act of self-care to invest in yourself by buying nice clothing. Because, investing in quality clothing will give you a number of things in return which will boost your self-esteem. Firstly, you will feel more confident. I've already told you, you are now wearing your suit 12% more attractive to the opposite sex. Now, if that doesn't make you feel more confident and give you more greater self-esteem, I don't know what will. But in addition to that, think of it in another way. You would think nothing of investing in your education. You will think nothing of paying monthly to go to a sports centre or a gym to invest in your fitness, or maybe other hobbies. You might be into any multitude of things, flying model airplanes or, travel. You think nothing of investing money in those passions. Think of it in the same way when you invest in quality clothing. It is an investment in your self-improvement and your self-confidence. Think of it like that. So those are my 3 reasons, really, why I agree with your mindset of investing in your clothing. But to answer a few of the other things you posed in your question to me, firstly, I would say, remember, you don't have to keep buying and buying and buying. You're talking about future suits costing thousands of dollars. You do not have to amass this massive wardrobe, which could be a crushingly expensive process. Unlike, here's a good example here, the Duke of Windsor. All right, Duke of Windsor was considered to be one of the forerunners of the dapper men style movement. Used to be King Edward, abdicated, became the Duke of Windsor, and set off on a life of luxury as a dapper man. And in 1960, an audit was undertaken of the Duke's wardrobe, and it was found he owned, and let me tell you, 15 evening suits, so tuxedos, dinner jackets, 55 lounge suits, and 100 pairs of leather shoes. That is too much. Nobody needs that, all right? You can really pare it down, have a number of core pieces which do the work for you. You don't have to keep buying and buying and buying. But even if you do, I would suggest investing in timelessly elegant clothing, right? Look at things which were fashionable or elegant 20 years ago and are still fashionable today. It tells you they're probably going to be within acceptable trends in 20 years and 30 years. So you're buying something, and let's be honest, it's going to be things like a simple, two-piece, either navy or some shade of grey, notch lapel, two-button suit. It's going to be elegant. It was elegant when Cary Grant wore that suit in the 1960s. It's going to be elegant when you wear it in the 2060s. You're investing in confidence in a piece which is going to transcend the passage of time. That's a good investment. And also remember, the pre-owned world is your friend. You do not have to hump all of your money into made-to-measure clothing. Sometimes you can get some real bargains pre-owned, particularly in the accessory world. Things like overcoats, raincoats, maybe even shoes, ties, pocket squares, scarves, little things like that. You don't have to, fire all your funds down that direction. Now you talk about how your family will feel about you maybe spending more money than anybody might be comfortable with in the clothing that you buy. What I would say is don't worry about that, all right? Things will change as your life unfolds. Your priorities change. Don't worry. It's going to happen. Just let it go with the flow. The bit of advice I may give you is that if you do get married and you do have a bit of an expensive hobby, if you've got the chance, marry somebody who also has an expensive hobby, because that way you've always got a sort of conversation around, are you spending more money or am I? Or if you've bought something, I can spend a bit more money on my hobby. My wife is an equestrian, all right? As I record this video now, she's out riding somewhere on her horse. And let me tell you, horses are an expensive business. More expensive, I would hazard a guess, than being sartorially well dressed. So every so often my wife is buying some expensive item for her nags, and I always say, oh well, I perhaps need a new blazer if you've bought a new saddle for the horse. There's a bit of give and take there if you're sensible. There we go. Your final comment about King Charles being a style icon for you was actually quite prophetic in a way, because he exhibits many of the qualities which you say you find endearing. What I would say is King Charles, he invests, yes, in good quality clothing. Anderson and Shepherd, Turnbull and Asser, John Lobb shoemakers, lots of very high-end things. However, he invests with an eye on longevity, because it's very much reported King Charles owns pairs of shoes which have been in his possession for 50 years, and there are visible patches on those shoes, because instead of throwing them away when they've seemingly worn out, he has them repaired. They live a life beyond the obvious. When they become damaged or in some way worn out, they're not just consigned to the rubbish bin, they are fixed and they have a second life. He's been seen wearing visibly patched suits. This goes to show that by investing in quality, it can be repaired and its life goes on and on. The other thing I would say about King Charles, he's not afraid of the pre-owned either. Sounds bizarre to say that, but he has been seen wearing overcoats that were owned by his late father, the Duke of Edinburgh, which were decades and decades old. So even, a monarch can actually make use of pre-owned clothing. So never let it be outside of your realms of ownership too. So there we go. I hope, Mark, that will give you some idea about how I approach, am I spending too much money on my clothes or not? Apply those observations to the situation you find yourself in, and it'll perhaps help you answer that question yourself. Now, if you've enjoyed today's video, I'd be delighted if you would give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like this, click the subscribe button. If you'd like to support the channel, you can leave me a comment, leave me a question, just like Mark did, and I will try and answer it in a video at some point in the future. You can buy me a coffee, which is like a one-off tip, or you can even become a patron, and I make extra videos for my patrons on a weekly basis. And if you want to get involved in any of that, you will find the links in the show notes below this video. So until the next time, think carefully about the items that you purchase, because they will be maybe the future advantage that you have in life on your journey to Chap Nirvana. So until the next time, take care, and I will see you again very soon.